All right, I am Josh Filger. I'm with AirOps Content and SEO, and this is part of our Growth Leader Series. Kevin Indig, Growth Consultant, is with us today. We're going to be talking about AIO, AI overviews, and AEO, answer engine optimization, SEO, which is search engine optimization, which you probably do know about that. So this is part of our ongoing Growth Leader Series. We've had great guests in the past like Eli Schwartz, Mike King, and Kevin is actually joining us again. So really great for you to be here today, Kevin.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
So this is our agenda for today. We're going to show Kevin show off his knowledge on all of these great aspects, the rise of AI overviews, how that's disrupting traditional search. And then we're also going to touch on Chegg versus Google. You know, how do you rank for an AIO? Is it any different than traditional SEO? And we have a lot of great questions at the end. You can see some of the great companies that have been with us. So let me formally introduce Kevin here. Whoops, here we go. Kevin has more than 10 years building growth teams at Shopify, G2, and multitude of others. He also has a very good weekly newsletter called Growth Memo, which you should definitely check out and sign up, especially if you hear a topic today that you want more info on. It's like a must read for sure. And then he's also a growth advisor for a lot of companies like Hims, Toast, and Reddit, and has helped companies acquire more than 100 million users through SEO, which is very impressive. So thank you again, Kevin, for being here today.
Thanks for the kind intro.
Yeah, so why don't you kick us off here, the rise of AI overviews.
Absolutely. So very broadly, what we're seeing is a tectonic shift in the largest user acquisition platform. So no matter whether you are a marketplace, a SaaS business, an e-commerce business, even a local business or a small business, one of your largest customer acquisition channels, which is Google, is changing significantly. And of course, it's due to AI. And the big question that I try to answer with some research is, of course, what's the impact on traffic or clicks through to websites? You know, how is that ecosystem changing? To do that, I analyzed over 19 studies that themselves looked at sometimes millions of or hundreds of millions of keywords to understand exactly what's going on. And the takeaway, the summary is essentially that we're seeing the biggest impact of AI on Google in the top of the funnel. Okay, what does that mean? So Google has been starting to show these AI overviews since May of last year. So we're a good 9 months in. And these AI overviews have evolved over time. Evolved in a sense that their underlying engine has gotten better. Google uses Gemini to basically run these AI overviews, but they have also changed in the frequency and amount of keywords that they show up for and in how often they change. So it's a vastly evolving new kind of change to the ecosystem. But the data shows that the majority of keywords that show an AI overview are really top of the funnel keywords. They're informational. People are trying to answer some questions. They're not trying to make a purchase. And that is very different to when AI overviews started out. At the beginning, Google was very aggressive with them. So aggressive that after 2 weeks, they had to pull back AI overviews significantly and publish a press release about improving the underlying answers. You probably all remember the scandals of, how many rocks should you eat and how many cigarettes should you smoke as a pregnant woman, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, long story short, we're seeing today the biggest impact on the top of the funnel, and we're seeing especially long tail queries being impacted. So the longer your search query, the higher the chance that you're seeing an AI overview. That translates to click-through rates. Feel free to stay on that slide, Josh. It's actually perfect transition. So that translates to click-through rates as well. The SEO agency Seer, sorry, Josh, I meant the previous slide. You can go to the next one. Yes, this one. Thank you. So agency Seer looked at click-through rates for keywords that show AI overviews compared to keywords that don't show AI overviews. And the trend is very clear. when Google shows AI overviews, your click rates are going down, meaning fewer people are clicking on your results. Now, two important caveats. One, that also translates to paid search. So fewer people are clicking on paid results when Google shows an AI overview, which is interesting because one of the big narratives is that Google might cannibalize its advertising model with AI answers. And that seems to be the case, but it's also at odds with the messaging that we're getting from Google's and Alphabet's leadership about the impact of AI overviews. So there's a lot of dissonance of advertising in AI overviews and kind of whether Google will be able to keep their current business model going. But the other interesting part is that even when you are in the AI overview in the form of a citation, so when there's a link to your website in the AI overview, your click-through rates are much, much lower compared to when Google does not show an AI overview. They're higher compared to when you are not in the AI overview, but they're still much, much lower. So long story short, this assumption that users might get their questions answered and might not have to click through to websites seems to be true. And there's a lot of nuance when it comes to the length of your query and when it comes to how high the intent is of users to make a purchase or convert.
Yeah, and maybe to level set a little bit here, when I think of AI overviews, we're kind of mostly talking about like Google and Bing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And so a real takeaway for me here is that if you look at January 2025, just that high organic CTR when the AIO is not shown.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's so fundamental impact here. And yeah, feel free to move over to Chegg. Because there's this interesting new lawsuit from education tech company Chegg, which is against Google for rolling out AI overviews and featured snippets, by the way. So Chegg is accusing Google of destroying their business by giving the answer away in the search results, either in the form of an AI overview or in the form of featured snippets. And that obviously has made big waves. And what I did here in the chart on the right-hand side is I compared the estimated traffic in SEMrush when AI overviews are shown in the search results. And that's the chart that you see on top of this chart on the right. And at the bottom, you see the estimated traffic from keywords that don't show an AI overview. And the story here is that, first of all, only 15 to 20% of Chegg's keywords actually show an AI overview. And two, it seems that also traffic from keywords that don't show an AIO is going down. So what does that tell us? A couple things. One of them is that I think a lot of the things in the lawsuit themselves, a lot of the claims are true, but I don't think that AI and AI overviews are the sole reason for why Chegg's business has been declining. Their stock is down over 90% year over year. So the business is falling apart. And they're considering to go private or selling to another business as a result of that. So huge problems, red alert, DEFCON 1. But again, I don't think AI overviews themselves have inflicted that big of a damage on Chegg. Two, the CEO of Chegg has actually called this out in an earnings call last year, which is that it's not AI overviews on Google per se, it is AI in general. Lots of surveys and research has shown that students are one of the prime adopters of AI in general, especially ChatGPT. And I think that is what's harming Chegg's business model much more. It's that they cannot sell quote unquote information anymore because AI provides that information for free. And as a result of that, I think that, again, I don't think the lawsuit is
Right,
going
that's
to
an
be
important
successful.
caveat to think about.
Yes, yes. Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
No, I was like that's just an important caveat to remember is that the market is just shifting under them as well. It's not just Google overviews.
Exactly, exactly. Their product market fit is falling apart, as Brian Balfour mentioned. And that is very important to keep in the back of your mind. And so when we go back to how Google selects sources, there's a couple of interesting things to learn from the research out there. One is that not just Google, but also any LLM prefers high authority uh, and well-structured content. That translates to the source as well. There's some research showing that chatbots, AI chatbots like ChatGPT prefer content for their training that comes from well-known publishers, for example. But we also see that same behavior in AI overviews, where it should come from a trustworthy domain with a known brand, and the content needs to be well structured, which means, headings clearly indicate what the content is about. Ideally, you have lists, you make it easy for users to navigate, for example, with the table of contents, and you're very intentional with the structure of your content. They also cite predominantly content from domains and brands that demonstrate expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. It goes back to this idea of authority, but it breaks it down into these kind of four factors that have been a topic for SEO for a long time. And then the other part, as I mentioned earlier, is structured data in the form of FAQs and well-formatted answers. So chatbots really like this idea of conversational content, which really just means there's a question and an answer. There's a question and an answer. It's almost like two people conversing, which helps them to very clearly understand what the actual question is and the answer, because they work based on probability, right? Which word is most likely to come next. The easier you make that for LLMs to understand, the higher your chances to show up as a citation in Google's AI overviews.
I love that conversational content idea. I mean, we're seeing that a lot at AirOps and just how we structure some of our workflows. If there's that question user, that pairing together really does help with that. And everyone listening, you can kind of see like some things haven't changed. Like EEAT is still important, kind of no matter the delivery method of the content.
Yes, absolutely. At the end of the day, EAT to me always is about who is saying the word. Is the word living on an unknown website and you don't know who's talking about this, or does it come from a place of authority, experience, and expertise and trust, of course. What's also interesting is the overlap between being cited in an AIO and your organic position. And as you can see here, I listed some of the research that looked at that and looked at how important it is to actually rank high in classic organic search to be visible in Google's AI overviews. And what you can see here is that it has become more important over time. So these days, it is not impossible to be cited when you rank outside of Google's top 10 positions, but it really, really helps. And yeah, the other, EAT for AI. So a couple of things that are important to keep in mind when writing, or when looking at the citations for AI overviews, is this idea of passive versus active ranking factors. So passive means that a lot of our classic SEO ranking factors, like authority in the form of backlinks and others, really have the biggest impact when it comes to being visible in classic organic search results, which then translates to being cited in AIOs or AI in general. So not all the things that seem to be important for AI have a direct impact. So again, it comes back to authority. It comes back to kind of the authors that are creating content on your site, how centered the topic is in your content, and how much of a specific topic you cover. All of these things are primary ranking factors for classic search engines, but because Google obviously uses its own search index to decide citations in AI overviews, and because ChatGPT leans so heavily on Bing search, it still is important to optimize for these classic search engines. But we should not confuse that with what LLMs actually measure. When you skip to the next slide, Josh, LLMs actually predominantly care about the actual content. And so this research here from Botify looked at the cosine similarity between AIOs on Google and the content in citations in the AIOs. And so cosine similarity, you can imagine that almost like how similar is the content, right? Just in expressed in a mathematical vector. And so what that means is that the way to appear in Google's AI overviews, or the most effective way, is to look at the content, look at the answer, and look at its elements. And elements could be lists, it could be paragraphs. Sometimes it's a list of products, sometimes it's a bulleted list. But that gives you a hint of what the AIO is actually looking for. And then you want to compare your content that is most eligible for this specific AI overview with the cited answer. So essentially, you want to do some matchmaking between how well does your content stack up against what's shown in the AI overview. And then first of all, you want to match the format, but second, you want to kind of match the intent and what the explicit answer actually says. The thing though is that you want to try to give a better answer, right? So, for example, the top cited source in the AI overview gives a list of 10 bullet points. Maybe you can provide a better answer in 5 bullet points. Or maybe you can provide even more depth with 20 bullet points, right? It's very contextual, but it all goes back to what users are actually looking for. Are they looking for depth? Are they looking for clarity, narrow focus, lists, overviews, paragraphs, in-depth descriptions? So you really need to go deep here. And it brings us back to this point of structured data, and kind of this idea of kind of factual responses. So how can you deliver as much value in a concise structure? There also is this point about entity recognition and brand citation. So interestingly, the research shows that only 5% of AIOs include the keyword that was searched to show the AI overview. And it brings us back to this idea that, Google obviously looks at user intent. That's no news for anybody tuning in. They've been doing that for a long time, and they build AI overview results based on Google's knowledge graph, and that's the bridge here to entities. So Google's knowledge graph is a big database of entities, which can be anything from people to companies to landmarks, whatever you have, things essentially. And Google understands the relationship between different things. For example, Barack Obama used to be president of the United States. So you have Barack Obama and you have the United States. Both of those are entities. Google understands that they're very related. And so because Google leans so heavily on the knowledge graph for AI overviews, you also want to make sure that your brand is being recognized as an entity, and ideally your authors are being recognized as entities. And the fastest way to do that is to look if the search for your brand name or author names returns a knowledge panel in the Google search results. So these quote unquote technical factors come on top of well-structured content, factual, like high density of facts, and the similarity between your content and the AIO.
I want to drill down here for a second. So traditionally, the featured snippet would take kind of like an excerpt from the top ranking post, and then it would have like the traditional link under here. But what we're seeing on this example is the AI overview is not like directly from a website, but it's like using the graph, and then your results saying like that top right at 0.82 could have similarity to that, and you want to try to match what the AIO is showing if you're trying to optimize your content.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Funny enough, it turns out that the way that Google, oops, sorry, I think I'm breaking up a little bit. Let me know when I'm back, Josh. Apologies about that.
I might have been disconnected a little bit. There we go.
Okay. Hope I'm back. So sorry for this. It's a good point, Josh, because the way that
Slide
Google,
here. I think I got a little hung up.
okay,
Yeah.
sorry, we're cutting over each other. Classic Zoom problems. Let me know when I'm back.
I
Oh,
can hear
okay.
you from my end.
Oh, okay, awesome. So real quick to just finish the point, the way that Google is creating AI overviews, fun enough, is that so Gemini first creates the answer to the search query and then looks for sources that match that answer. I always thought that, hey, of course, Google looks at the top search results, crawls the content, and then feeds it into Gemini, and then Gemini spits out basically a summary Turns out that's not how it works. Somebody shared, I forgot who that was, but shared the patent with me that underlies these AIOs. And it turns out, again, that it's the reverse approach. And that's why this cosine similarity is so important and works so well. I'm glad you skipped over to that slide, Josh, because I think this is critical to understand. We've already started doing some of that with featured snippets, where we looked at what exactly does the featured snippet show, and then how can we tweak our content to emulate and improve the answer for it. And it's the same approach for AI overviews. The challenge is that AIOs change much more often, and it can be much, much harder to say when they show up because they're so long tail heavy. So they show up so much more for long tail keywords. But either way, the approach is to match the answer, tweak your content, see if you're being shown as a source, and if not, go back and tweaking your content. So it's this kind of ping pong approach where you, to be successful, need a high loop of looking what the answer is, adjusting your content, seeing if you're cited, adjusting again, looking what the answer is, and keeping track of that as much as possible. And of course, if you use tools to track AIOs, that becomes so much easier and faster than just manually checking all of that. All right, I think we can skip to the next slide. All right, I think I lost Josh for a hot moment here. I'm sure he's going to be right back. I used that opportunity to get some water in.
I'll jump on really quick here, Kevin. I'm the Q&A person in the background. Maybe we just go through some Q&As while we're waiting for Josh to return. But
Perfect.
one question that came in from Gurav was around what's the source of the click-through rate data? Is it from like particular website? Is it from, I think in your most recent growth memo, you mentioned like educational companies and other sectors. Within different sectors, are you seeing click-through rates being impacted more or less?
So the research from Sierra, I have to go back to see what their basis was for the click-through rate data. I don't have it top of mind, but I know that Sierra does top-notch work, and they usually are very critical with their data. So I have high trust in the data being accurate. But I will also say that whenever I share data, on publicly, I often get like two responses. One is, "Oh, that doesn't match at all with my experience," or "That's exactly on point with my experience." So the impact is nuanced and is could be different for anyone. And so what I've been seeing is that, especially in areas like health, where Google shows a higher rate of AI overviews, click-through rates are absolutely impacted. And it's interesting because I always thought that, health is one of these very sensitive areas where you don't want to risk a potential hallucination. AI overviews are based on AI after all. But it doesn't, Google actually shows AIOs in health the most with the highest rate. And my theory for why that is that Google has access to a lot of medical research. And that makes it so much easier for them to reduce hallucination. And I will also say that, I have clients in the health space, and I will say that the hallucination rate or the factual incorrectness rate in AI overviews is very, very close to zero in the health space. Probably, like marginal to a degree that it's actually very accurate.
Well, welcome back, Josh. What I might do, I think, Josh, your internet's a little bit choppy. I can continue sharing and then just I'll let the two of you direct me as you want.
Cool. Let's do this. Thank you. I think we can go to the next slide and skip this one. And one more time. And for the last time.
There we go. Sorry.
Awesome. No problem. Jumping back, what's interesting here is I've done a analysis of 500,000 keywords last year that show AI overviews. And what I found is that the domains that are most visible in AI overviews is very different from the domains that are most visible in classic Google search. So when we look at AI overviews, we see platforms like YouTube, Wikipedia, or LinkedIn getting cited the most. And when we compare that with the right-hand side, which shows the appearance or the visibility of domains in regular organic search, we see Google itself, we see YouTube, but we also see Reddit, we see Quora, Wikipedia, and so the first stark difference is that Google doesn't cite Reddit and Quora at all for AI overviews, but shows them very prominently in classic search results. And the way that I make sense of this is that Google uses platforms or forums like Quora and Reddit as a sort of balance to AI content, but also AI results. And I know that especially Reddit is seen as very critically in the SEO scene. I personally, I looked into why Reddit users are actually using Reddit, and it paints a pretty concise story, which is that even though that there is some spam on Reddit for sure, um, people want they want answers from other people. They want to connect with other people, and they're often unhappy with Google search results, right? They say it's too much fluff, it takes too much time to get to the answer, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that Reddit and Quora has its place in the Google search results. They're probably meant to stay there. I don't think that their visibility is, I don't think this is an experiment from Google. I think they're going to stay, but they're not being cited in AI overviews where Google leans much more heavily on content platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn. And what it also means for us is that SEO should probably go beyond your own website, right? We had a very centered focus over the last couple of years, and that makes sense. But I think there's also time to figure out what's our organic YouTube and LinkedIn strategy. Maybe Reddit for classic search results as well. But I think that is a very often overlooked counterfactual coming out of this trend and switch to AI. It's that we need to think beyond our website.
So I think last time that we spoke together, you presented on Reddit, and we were talking about how those have really come up in the search results quite a bit. Are you seeing AI overviews like pull from Reddit, Quora as well?
I see AIOs not pulling from Reddit and Quora, but I do see sometimes, here and there, I see some LLMs like ChatGPT or Perplexity, but it's relatively rare, even though we all know that Google and Co are using Reddit to train their models. But interestingly, they're not being used as sources, citations a lot. And I do think that there is a certain risk of citing a thread and not being exactly sure kind of what's behind it. I see that LLMs or AI chatbots much rather link to marketplaces or publishers where they also don't need to take like a specific opinion or position about an answer.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. Great to be back. Sorry for the technical issues there, but if you're ready to grow your content and really just think a little bit more about AI content workflows and those processes, we're offering some exclusive strategy sessions. There's the QR code to sign up. You'll see how modern content teams are structured, what workflows we're really seeing work with our clients. You can see Angie Ramp, Harvard Business Publishing is using AirOps. And you can also see what your team can achieve for those results. So there's the QR code, or you can email us. I think we're also going to drop a link in the chat. So hopefully you can connect and learn more. Here we go to the next one. Thank you.
All right. Obviously, AI expands much beyond Google. And we're seeing, obviously, I mean, I don't want to say the unprecedented word again because I think that's a inflated, but we're seeing this historic shift to more people using LLMs. We see that over 400 million people use ChatGPT weekly, and it's really threatening Google and Google's business model. And what's interesting is that there is a bigger overlap when it comes to optimizing for LLMs and when it comes to optimizing for AI overviews. And again, after all, the AI overviews are powered by an LLM, which is Gemini as well. So it kind of makes sense. But we do also see that AI overviews have some unique traits that LLMs do not have. And so I think we've mentioned a lot of times how to kind of structure your content, approach your content. But an important point for LLMs that we haven't spoken about yet is this idea of a web footprint. So how prominently are you represented across the web outside of your websites? And that can even go into things like content syndication. I haven't, like pushed that narrative a lot yet, but I think content syndication has gotten a new quality and importance because it helps you, if you do it well, to be visible on top tier news outlets or publishers, which are, as we mentioned already, preferred training data. So I think content syndication can really boost visibility in LLMs. I don't have the data for that yet. So for now, it's a theory. Take it with a grain of salt. But I think that ties right into this idea of your web footprint.
I'm looking at this list here and I'm just like, wow, how do I even optimize all of my articles for each of these different ones? I mean, that almost seems like an impossible task without like a huge team and just almost like a SME focused only on like perplexity and like checking that. What are just some suggestions maybe for which of these to prioritize, which of these to think about? Should we just keep thinking about Google AIO? Should we think about ChatGPT? Like, what should we do here as far as prioritization?
It's such a good question, Josh, because there's, we can obviously look at usage. And when we look at usage, ChatGPT comes out far ahead. So the data shows that over 50% of traffic from AI chatbots comes from ChatGPT. I will say, though, that, there's also a case to be made to optimize for AI chatbots that send traffic out at all. Claude, for example, does not cite or does not send traffic out at all. So I wouldn't look at Claude right now, to be honest. Maybe that changes at some point, but I think ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and Copilot are really the ones that are that you should pay attention to the most when it comes to traffic. But that's only the point when we talk about referral traffic, meaning traffic actually arriving on our website from AI chatbots. There's this whole universe of being mentioned in an AI chatbot that we haven't really explored, and there isn't that much data around it yet. There's some interesting research papers that I also wrote about in my growth memo newsletter that are coming out of South Korea, where a research team looked at the influence of being mentioned in AI chatbots on purchase decisions. And they came to the conclusion that there is a significant influence, especially when consumers or users don't have a preferred brand yet, right? So if you're looking for, a bank and say you're new to the country, you have no idea which bank is good or bad, the influence of being mentioned in an AI chatbot is incredibly high. If you if everyone in your family uses Bank of America, right? Then when ChatGPT recommends Wells Fargo or JP Morgan Chase, the impact on your decision is much smaller. That being said, we need a lot more data and a lot more research because that is a very new field, and there's obviously a lot of implications and nuance. But the very practical approach that I would run is, first of all, I would look at the referral traffic from AI chatbots to my website, and you can do that in Google Analytics or your web analytics tool of choice. It's super simple. You'll find tons of manuals on your in your preferred AI chatbot. The other thing is when it comes to AIOs, which I also strongly suggest you at least track, I would also start by just tracking which of my keywords actually show an AI overview, and then look at what content could be most legible to decide which content to even optimize and tackle. Because I totally agree with your point, Josh. I don't think this headless chicken approach to just touching all your content and trying to optimize it is viable or feasible. I think it needs a targeted approach. That is based on which of your content actually has the potential to be visible in AI overviews or AI chatbots, and that starts with measuring.
Very important. Yep, next slide.
Awesome. So, a couple of unique factors to take into account when it comes to LLMs. First of all, um, the the relevance of your content to the answer is the most important thing, right? We spoke about that in the context of cosine similarity, but the big difference between AI chatbots and classic search engines is simply that users search longer queries. They ask full questions, sometimes hundreds of words to provide a lot of context. And that means that LLMs have a very, very clear idea of what users are looking for. The bigger challenge for them is to find a good answer. And so the more specific your content to an intent or to something that people could be looking for, the higher chances of being either mentioned or cited in AI chatbots. The other thing is obviously brand presence and entry recognition. We already spoke about that, but how big is your web footprint, and are you visible on trusted sources? And then the thing that is also very unique is the technical aspect. So LLMs don't do well at all with JavaScript, and I think we're I think we're not making that point big enough in all of the conversations that are happening across the industry, because it means that if you build your site on a client-side JavaScript framework, there's a very high chance that LLMs cannot show and crawl and index your content. So that is a big, big problem. There are some LLMs that are finding workarounds, like Perplexity, for example. If they have content in their training data that comes from client-side rendered websites, then they will still cite it. But for the largest part, you want to make sure that your most important elements on all of your pages are not client-side rendered or not don't require JavaScript to be shown. That can have a significant impact on your visibility. We already spoke about content syndication, but then there's also this thing to be said about the writing style. Again, you want to make it as easy as possible for an LLM to understand the relationship between words in a sentence. And the easiest way to do that is to use active voice instead of passive voice, right? The human bit the man instead of the man was bitten by the human. Very clear relationships, makes it super, super simple. Also, by the way, a better user experience for actual humans.
Yeah, for sure. One question that is popping up quite a bit. Well, first as an aside, the JavaScript point is very overlooked. I totally agree with that. And it's something that like a lot of sites have to reconsider. But we're getting a lot of questions about how do I know if my page, my brand is appearing in AIO at all? Because I know you're talking about like measuring and seeing which pieces of content are appearing there. What is just the way to do that at all?
Yep, yeah. So the best way is to use third-party tools. Um, all of the main rank trackers, right, SEMrush, Ahrefs, etc., they all have AIO tracking built in now. There's also ZipTie, there's Profound, there's Scrunch, right? There's a bunch of third-party tools. I don't want to recommend just one because there's many, many solutions. But at the end of the day, the approach is not very different from classic SEO rank or keyword tracking.
Yeah, good point. Go ahead and move to the next one. Here we go. Well, good lead in here. How do we measure AI search visibility?
Yes. This is important because the way that different AI chatbots and LLMs make brands visible can vary based on their training data. Most LLMs have their own crawlers, so they crawl the web and they crawl it very aggressively. I mean, there have been scandals around Perplexity ignoring basic rules like robots.txt. There are complaints about the server load of AI crawling, and you can even see it in the statistics. Cloudflare has a dashboard called Radar that shows the increase of AI crawlers over time, and it's absolutely aggressive. And so the two ways to essentially be visible in AI chatbots or LLMs is either through training data or it is through being crawled. Training data usually comes from public web indices like Common Crawl, C4. There's a bunch of them. There's also something to be said probably about licensing partnerships, right? So Google and OpenAI have licensing deals with Reddit. They also have licensing deals with publishers to be allowed to cite their content, but also train their models on content. But those are really the only ways when it comes to training data. The other part again are is being crawled by an LLM, and that is very similar to how Google or Bing crawl your websites as well. So you want to make sure you're as visible for both of these options. And if you work for a marketplace or a data provider that has a potential partnership on the table with OpenAI or any other LLM, then I'm telling my clients you want to leverage that. You want to use that. Yelp is a good example. They already do have an integration with ChatGPT, and I think there's absolutely something to be a first mover when it comes to being kind of the preferred source for a certain field. There's also something to be said about giving away too much data. So don't want to get lost in this whole point, but just want to call out that there is a potentially third option, which is to become a licensing partner for AI overviews, or sorry, for AI chatbots in general.
Yeah, and that's going to be the much larger sites that have like a huge footprint, right? Be able to create those partnerships.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Can go to the next slide here. Oh, yes. Thank you, Kevin, for that. A big question that we all have is does AI content and ops actually work together? And we do have some results from some clients with AirOps. You can see that top teams are using AirOps to drive organic growth and to increase their pipeline. For example, Winley here is using mid-funnel and bottom-funnel editorial content to increase their customers from organic channels. They've seen phenomenal growth, really great case study on the website. The same with Toys R Us and Klein, for example, have increased their traffic, but not only increased their traffic, have seen their publication speed increase as well. And I think that's what's really important to remember as you're building out with AI and AI content workflows. It's not just about the end result, it's how you get to that result. And that's where AirOps really makes a huge difference. And so we appreciate Kevin for sharing, and we're going to get to the Q&A here in a second. But if you would like to learn more about how these workflows work and with AirOps, a couple of distinctions here is that you can actually customize AirOps to your brand and audience. We have brand kits, knowledge bases where you can upload your core information, your documents, so that any outputs are exactly pulling from your data and resources. And then a big thing here at AirOps is the human review step. That is so key to making sure that the quality of content, but then also just your workflows really just meet the standards that you've already set for yourself. And so you'll always have experts in the loop, and you can see the integrations there at the bottom that we connect with. So that's an important part of AirOps that we always hone in on. And so if you want one of these strategy sessions, we're offering 10 of these. You can see how agencies and in-house teams are structured and are using AirOps, the exact workflows to really gain and to get at some of those results, and then real-world examples of client stories, but also workflows that you can use right away. So scan the QR code, email us, team@airops.com, mention this webinar, the Kevin Indig webinar, and yeah, excited to jump here and to learn about the Q&A. And we've got lots of questions coming in. I've had several people contact me over the past few days with some questions. So I'm going to start there. Sarah from Sim Local had a question, which I think is on the top of all of our minds, because we have GSC for kind of traditional performance and queries. She was interested, do you think Google will ever be transparent about AI overviews and have a tool similar to GSC for that?
I wish. That is my hope, and that's my ask also to Google. Realistically, I don't see a lot of signs for this right now. I actually see it going the other direction. Google just launched AI mode, which is an AIO on steroids. It gives you an even deeper answer. It takes you out of the regular search experience. And Google has already updated their official documentation saying that they're not going to even include any clicks on AI mode in Google Search Console. So my chances, or my hope is, I think the chances are low. I don't have a lot of hope for this. And there is a chance, Google also does provide some data in the Merchant Center, which is a prominently it's like a GSC for Google Shopping. But I think what it means for us is that we need to find other ways to understand um, what's important to users in terms of when we need to show up. And so I think on the one hand, we need to look at aggregate data, which is very fuzzy, but are we directionally going in the right direction? For example, broad organic traffic. And we also need to go back to user research. And I think that's actually a good thing. I have the privilege to work with lots of tech companies, and um, I can confidently say that 9 out of 10 are not talking to their audience or to their customers, and I think we need to go back to that. I think we need to have a regular channel to our customers. We can use AI to better collect the data and analyze the data, but we need to go back and ask, okay, do you remember what you were searching for, or do you remember parts of your user journey? What was important in your choice? Basic market research, and factor that into our decision making when it comes to content production and SEO.
Yeah, that's a really great point. It's just like, you might just have to go back to the fundamentals on some of that stuff, but like just actually see what your customers are talking about. This question came up from Andrew at Call Tracking Metrics, and then Zach from Conductor also had a similar question. Considering all the optimization factors and all the LLMs, should we create net new content to like answer some of these questions? Or do you think we can just kind of take our blog post, our page from like a year or two ago, and optimize or update that? What do you think is the best approach?
Yeah. I think it's a great question because I think both. On the one hand, and I see this even for classic SEO, right? There's still a lot of kind of publish and forget type of mindset when it comes to content. It's like, oh, we published it didn't do so well, so we published more. And I think whether it's for AI optimization or classic search engine optimization, you want to treat every piece of content as a product that is on like it's on a shelf in a supermarket, right? And you can't just simply forget it because it occupies important shelf space. So I think this idea of going back to existing content and improving it and refining it is absolutely critical. But there's also something to be said about assessing your content gap, not just in the context of competitors, but also in the context of, do I cover a topic holistically? Do I cover all aspects that are important about a topic? Or is there something I'm not covering? And then filling that gap.
Great points. Like, it's just kind of, you always need to be pruning, maintaining, optimizing your content, like kind of no matter what. We actually have some great refresh workflows for that as well. A question that's come up in my mind is, with the AI overviews, with the LLM searches, and this has come up quite a bit, like Dan from Service Titan had this as well. How have the KPIs changed, or are there KPIs that we now need to focus on a little bit more than we have in the past?
Yeah. By the way, Dan, congrats on that upcoming IPO. Very exciting. But back to topic. Yes, I think KPIs are absolutely changing. For example, I see a lot of sites and companies losing organic traffic in the last few months. I actually polled my LinkedIn followers, and I got about, I don't know, 350 responses or so. And I asked them, have you seen a traffic decline in the last 60 days that is clearly attributable to AI? 30% said yes, 30% said no, and 30% said not sure. So it leaves us with 60% potentially being affected by AI. And yet at the same time, whenever I see a site or customer who sees a decline in organic traffic, it often does not touch the bottom line, which goes back to this idea that it's often the top of the funnel that's being affected, or informational content. So I think in terms of a KPI reset, a couple of things need to be said. One is there is a new visibility component that we should factor in that includes visibility in AI chatbots. I previously mentioned that even just being mentioned by ChatGPT, for example, without being cited, has value because it can impact purchase decision, and we need to start measuring that visibility. Two, we need to look more at the bottom line generated by SEO organic traffic rather than just traffic, because traffic is flat to down for a lot of companies. Not all of them, But there's some counterexamples, but for a lot of them. So the question is always, what's the relationship between organic traffic and your bottom line? Can be sales, revenue, leads, purchases, whatever you have. And then the other thing is, I think it's important to add post-purchase surveys to our arsenal of tracking. So essentially, how are users self-attributing the channel that they use to first find the company? So have you, basically asking people after they sign up or bought something, how have you found us, right? Is it Google, podcast, Reddit, paid search, etc. And it's not perfect by any means. People will forget how they found a company or be biased and influenced. But I do still think that as a whole it makes sense, because you will find trends that all of a sudden turns out that 10% of our leads are coming from YouTube, but only 0.1% of our traffic, right? So you can fill some of these holes in tracking and attribution, not perfectly, but better than nothing.
Yeah, that's great. The attribution point. I have one more question here, and then when I know you have a few as well. This is coming from Giro, I believe is how you say his name, and he's quoting directly from your growth memo. So I thought I would let him have a shot here. He said that the old world of content creation, and I think he's quoting from you, was competing in SEO means creating more content faster, but the new world means surfacing and finding new and relevant insights. Do you still see that as relevant even with AIOs?
100%. By the way, thanks, Euro, for reading the growth memo. Very much appreciated. But yeah, I think it's truer than ever, because a couple of things have been accelerated by AI. One is this idea of mediocre content, right? If you think about content as a bell curve, and the majority of content is in the middle of the bell curve, it's average. Everything average and below is invisible now. Doesn't matter, because you can get that answer in LLMs with a much better experience, much clearer to your preference and personalized. So then the question is, what brings you to the right side or to the top of the bell curve? Sorry, not the top, the right side. So what makes your content extraordinary? And that is, first of all, it addresses a topic that is not addressed. I haven't spoken about this at all, but I'm thinking a lot about this idea of an information gap. Information gap comes out of classic search engines and information retrieval, and it basically means that there's no good result for a query. And information gap is actually a huge topic these days, because as SEOs, we've been so attuned to creating content for keywords that have search volume. But that is not always accurate. And that problem grows even more, meaning there's a whole blue ocean of queries or intents that are not served because they don't have search volume. And again, AI accelerates it because people are asking longer questions, so there's even less data about search volume. And so the key to succeed and get to the right side of the bell curve is, first of all, what people are really looking for, whether it has search volume or not. And that brings us back to market research that we're just talking about. Two, you have a better answer than anybody else. And that is another thing that we have traditionally been slacking on a little bit as SEOs. A better answer means you might have unique or better data than anybody else, or you might have better insights based on your product usage or based on surveys, right? So I think a lot of content generation will go back to finding insights and finding out what insights are needed. And the better you do that, the more successful you are. And it could mean that create a lot of content with AI, but it can also mean that you create a little bit of content that just really hits the nail on the head.
Love that. Owen, did you have some questions?
Yeah, I tried to take, we have 37 unopened questions in the Q&A, so I don't think we'll get through all of them with the 4 minutes that are left, but one recurring theme I saw, Kevin, and leading on from your mention of like the growth memo and almost how to determine the best strategy going forward. The theme that's come out in a lot of questions is companies have been hit hard by AIOs, or people are at agencies and their clients have been hit hard. They're kind of trying to figure out, should they go headfirst and try and optimize for citations and appearances in these AI overviews, or should they look to go deeper down the funnel and maybe put their data to use? So I guess that's a very broad question to try and answer in the last minute or two, but like your strategy and theory around like differentiation came to mind. So maybe you can try and like knit a few things there for people as they try and figure out how to optimize for organic on a go forward basis to maybe make up that delta in traffic that they're seeing today.
Yeah, it's such a good point. Owen. I'm glad we have time for that question because I have two kind of ways to challenge that. And I see, you know, not to say that this question is wrong at all. I think that's the right question. I think it's on everybody's mind. But one, um, when there's a decision between two ways, I always wonder, can we do both? Can we go to the bottom and medium of the funnel in classic search? And can we also find a way to optimize more for AIOs and LLM chatbots? So that would be my first push. I do think that there probably is a world to do both. But again, it takes like a mindset shift and a different way to operate. The second push that I have is about this idea of regaining the traffic. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that traffic is gone. And I think the much more important point is to figure out um, you know, actually two things. One is what is the narrative for leadership? Because the reality is that a lot of people here are either on this webinar, they're either in-house or they're probably consultants or at an agency. And so all of us have to figure out what is our narrative for leadership? How do we explain that decline in traffic? And in my experience, most leaders are fine with the decline in traffic. What they really care about is the bottom line and maybe some downstream impacts on brand, et cetera, right? But I think that is the art there in the balance is to show that the bottom line might be healthy, or if not, to figure out a plan for how to regain the bottom line. I think that's very realistic. But then also help leaders understand that this traffic volume for top of the funnel queries is gone and will probably never come back because people get it from AI chatbots. And the other challenge then is how do you like what kind of bottom and middle of the funnel queries to go after? And I could speak a whole hour about what most companies miss when it comes to that, but I just want to like two quick examples. One is competitor pages or alternative pages. Um, a lot of companies very hesitant to compare themselves with alternative solutions, which could be a spreadsheet or could be another company, by the way. But I think going really deep into that, it's by far not the only option you have, but I think that's something that you should really rethink. And then to draw an example from e-commerce, most companies create no content that helps their users make a choice between their own products. For example, this is a good one here. Sure, the company that creates or built this mic, they actually do a great job in helping you navigate which mic do you actually need, right? Because I did some research and was like, oh, I should probably get a new mic. Which one should I need? And they have like 50 options. And it's like, how do I pick from that option? That is great bottom of the funnel or middle of the funnel content. Make it easier for users to pick the right product of your inventory and educate them in the process. So I think it takes these kind of mindset shifts to kind of regain bottom line, but it takes a strong skill in communication to build the narrative of lost top of the funnel traffic and what to focus on in the future.
I love that. I mean, because that's distinct content that Sure has that you can then spread, for example. If you'd like to connect with us, here we are at AirOps, LinkedIn, and AirOps.com. And then Kevin is at LinkedIn. And once again, great newsletter, growth-memo.com. You can go to /subscribe. And check the notes there in the chat for your exclusive strategy session. Thank you all for bearing, and Kevin, more probably specifically, thank you for bearing through the technical issues on my end. Really appreciate that, and you going with the flow there.
Of course, any webinar without technical issues is too scripted. So I'm glad we could make it happen, Josh and Owen, and of course to the whole team. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for joining. And if there are any questions that I weren't able to answer, again, looking forward to that chat. And if not, hit me up on LinkedIn. Always happy to do my best to come back to you.
Yeah, I saved those questions as well, so maybe we'll save those for another time. Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone, and we will chat in a couple of weeks at the next Growth Leader webinar series. Thanks.